Yo Gelakastokla Nugwa Amputlas, Hetman Ligami Jessica. Welcome everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to the first session of the Language of Wellness webinar. This series is led by the First Nations Health Authority, Vancouver Island Region, in partnership with Khepé Wellness and the First Peoples Cultural Council. And with the support of these partners and our community relationships, we've been able to invite fluent speakers and language champions to participate in the series. The Language of Wellness webinar is a 5-part series that focuses on Indigenous language revitalization on Vancouver Island. So our webinar series will highlight the important linkages between health and language, and we're hoping to demonstrate how learning our languages can be a holistic approach to our health and well-being. So in this series, we will be featuring 4 out of the 6 languages on Vancouver Island, which includes Nuchanoth, Hokaminam, Sinchothin, and Kwakwala. And today I'm very pleased to welcome 2 of our guests, Thea Harris from the First Peoples Cultural Council and Michael McCarthy. And thank you all for taking the time to join us and to be here. Thea Harris is a language programs coordinator at the First Peoples Cultural Council, taking care of the Reclaiming My Language program and the Language Revitalization Planning program. Thea is a member of Snuneymuxw First Nation and uses her background in Indigenous business and interest in community capacity mobilization to support her work. And Michael McCarthy is Nuchanoth from Utluathlat. Michael, first and foremost, is a hereditary commoner and has been put in situations that have allowed him the honor to be published researcher in communications, has a background in counseling. He's been a guest lecturer at universities, and his career spans a residential school experience that started with the RCMP Special Task Force to emceeing national and regional events with the Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, and being part of the closing of the TRC events in Ottawa. Michael is passionate about language revitalization and decolonization. So a big warm welcome to both of you, Thea and Michael. And I'd just like to take a moment to invite you, Michael, to open us up in a good way, if you would, with a prayer or some opening remarks. Gelakasa.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And my granny has been the biggest teacher in my life. And so anytime she said, we come together, grandson, use your language, pray in our language so the Creator hears you better. And so in honoring Granny's teachings, I'll start us off in a good way with a prayer to get this happening for us today. And you can think of your own beliefs and your own systems, but I really just want you to be in the moment and listen to the words. Chu hatlapiawat. Why kashnas hatlapiawat? Why kashnas hatlapiawat? Clark wane su tis hatwir. Kasian plimaksti. Haakapin hatwir. Chamapi api. Why kashnas hatlapiawat? Why kashna satlapirpith? Chukwaglik nanyaksu, chukwaglik. Chu unatlapi. Kliko. Back to you, Jessica.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate those beautiful words. So we'll get started into the discussion, and just wanted to start with Thea, if you would like to share, maybe introducing yourself, and you're welcome to get started into any presentation that you'd like.
Thanks so much, Jessica, and thanks, Michael, for those words of opening there. It's really special to hear the language come out right from the gate here as we start this webinar, so thank you for that. I will go ahead and share my screen and then introduce myself, if that's all right. Yeah, so we're gathered here today for this Language of Wellness webinar. Really excited to be here. Of course, like Jessica was saying, it's a 5-part series that focuses on Indigenous language revitalization on Vancouver Island and the important linkages found between language and health. So I do just want to acknowledge the First Nations Health Authority, Vancouver Island Region, and the Respecting Tobacco and Traditional Wellness Program leads for their role in this, and also being in partnership with Bay Wellness. It's been a real privilege to work with your team, and I'm really excited to be here and be sharing with you today. So, yeah, my name is Thea Harris. As you said, I'm a language programs coordinator at FPCC. And I'm calling in today from Shianu territory, but as you mentioned, my family is from Sunamo First Nation, just a couple hours north of here. So really thankful to be here, as I said. So I do just want to start this webinar off by acknowledging the territory on which our FPCC office is on. First Peoples Cultural Council is grateful to have our offices located on the beautiful traditional unceded territory of the Wasanich Nation, Nation people in the village of Tsartlip. Also, I want to acknowledge that we're calling in from different parts of BC. As I said, I'm calling in from Shianu territory and just thankful to be here. And want to acknowledge all the territories we're calling in from as we discuss the important work of revitalizing our Indigenous languages. We're grateful for the time and energy you've set aside to join us today in our webinar. Grateful for those who have come to hear us and share, and grateful for the speakers who've come to this webinar series and who are yet to come. I'm really excited for the next sessions that are upcoming. It sounds like we have some really great people speaking, so thankful to those people as well that will come after this session. I also want to acknowledge the speakers that are on today. We're so grateful for the speakers who hold on to their languages, and we honor and celebrate you. So just a couple items here. I do just want to invite you to be present and centered. I know my grandparents always tell me to put my feet on the ground, so both my feet are on the ground now. So however you center, I invite you to do that. It may be helpful for you to remove distractions if that's something that would be helpful to you, to be present with us. Also, feel free to grab some note-taking material. I love taking notes. I'm a note taker. If that's something that interests you, you can jot down questions or important information. Although I know this webinar presentation will be made available afterwards, so just be aware of that. Also, a couple housekeeping items. I believe we are recording this webinar, so it'll be made available. And then we will have a question and answer period at the end. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go, and just know that we have space and time to share some questions and answers at the end of our session. And just before we jump into our question and answer period, we'll have a brief overview of Zoom. I don't know about anyone else, but I always need a refresher on Zoom, and they're always doing updates. So it's always nice to have a refresher. So we'll do that before we jump into our question and answer period. And then in the session today, the goal of the session is to share a little bit about FPCC. So who are we? What's our purpose, and who do we serve? I also want to talk to the connection between language, health, and wellness. And I think we have some really exciting discussion that's gonna come about around those pieces. Also want to talk about language revitalization strategies. And then a specific language revitalization strategy, which is the Reclaiming My Language program, which is what Michael McCarthy is going to speak to today. I'm so thankful he's been able to be here with us. It was a real privilege to work with Michael on the Reclaiming My Language program. And so I'm so thankful that he's been able to come here today. And then again, we're going to have some time for questions after. So I do have a little bit more of a formal introduction here. Again, as I said, my name is Thea Harris. I'm a language programs coordinator at FPCC. I take care of the Reclaiming My Language program, which we're going to speak about later, and the Language Revitalization Planning program. As I mentioned, I'm calling in from Shianu territory, but my family's from Sununamo, and I'm really pleased to be here. Also, I would love to invite Michael forward to introduce himself a little bit more fulsomely, and he'll introduce himself now and then rejoin us later for a discussion about his experience with the Reclaiming My Language program. But just give Michael a bit of space here to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Thea. Uklama Chisquath, Yuthutata Heshquit. Chisquath means to rake in the wealth of the world and give it all away. It was my father's name and his father's before him. And so our land was so rich that all we needed was a rake to go down to the beach, to rake in the wealth of the world and to give it all away. And so when I look at language, those are the things that I'm always reminded of, is my name and what it really means. Currently right now, my present day job is I'm a regional coordinator for T-Check Mental Health. We provide mental health services within the Central Region nations of the Untitled Territory. I always frame myself as a hereditary commoner, farthest from the seat, outside the house. This is where I come from. My grandmother was the biggest teacher of my life, along with all the fluent speakers that were in my house growing up. And that's basically the framework that I brought forward into any of the work that I do, especially the kind of work I do in mental health. I just want to share this, and I'll pass it over to Thea. When we were developing mental health programs within the Untitled Territory 30 years ago, when I was a young kid, I would have to bring my granny everywhere. And we didn't have any counselors at the tribal council then. And Health Canada was in the room and chiefs are banging the table. And the chiefs were like, we need control of our own resources. We need counselors. People are dying. And so my granny leaned into me and said, grandson, what we have is right and proper. And what she was referring to, all the things we did prior to contact. And those are the things that I help people remember, to help them get back into the language. And it's okay to ask those questions. And often I frame asking, instead of saying, how do I say this? I get people to say, help me remember how to say that. And just that slight change allows the door to open wider. And so that's a little bit about me. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and I'll turn it back to you, Thea.
Thanks so much, Michael. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our chat later. So thanks so much for that introduction. And I guess I'll just launch into our stuff here. So I'm going to do a bit of an overview of FPCC. I'm not sure how many people have maybe heard of our organization, but just going to share who we are and kind of what we do, a little bit about us. So who we are, the First Peoples Cultural Council is a Crown corporation, which for the past 30 years has operated with a mandate of providing leadership and support for the revitalization of Indigenous languages, art, cultures, and heritage in British Columbia. We're unique in that we are a First Nations governed and managed. That is, our board of directors and advisory committee represent the 34 nations, First Nations languages across the province. We work in close partnership with language keepers, artists, and cultural leaders in the communities of this province. And of course, our purpose is to provide leadership for the revitalization of Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage. Our vision, I love this, and I love talking about it. Our vision is Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage in BC are thriving. The knowledge and worldviews expressed through Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage are valued as essential to our collective well-being and human rights. This vision really speaks to me, so I really had to include it here. And our purpose is to create opportunities for communities to rebuild cultural systems and ensure the transmission of knowledge to the next generations. So we do this primarily by distributing grant funding, but we also provide, and people may not know, but we also provide training, professional development, resources, a ton of resources, and coaching to support arts, language, and cultural heritage revitalization across the province. And we do maintain language technologies and advocate for funding and policy change in accordance with the needs of Indigenous communities. By leveraging both technology and traditional knowledge, we've developed tools to support the documentation of Indigenous languages, such as our First Voices technology, which I encourage you to check out. I think it can be accessed through our website, and also you can check it out at firstvoices.com. Finally, our role is to play an international and national role in First Nations language revitalization by sharing knowledge and best practices and monitoring the status of First Nation languages in BC. So to find out more about the status of First Nations languages in BC, you can visit our website. The most recent report on the status of First Nations languages, which we put out every 4 years, is from 2018, and it has some great and uplifting findings, some of which are there's a big rise or a significant rise in new learners and a rise in younger fluent speakers, which was a really exciting finding as we kind of went through the research and the statistics around the status of languages around the province. And then who do we serve? So talking about what we do and who we serve. Of course, we serve the 34 languages of BC with 90 plus dialects, many dialects, including urban Indigenous folks and people. Also the 204 First Nations community, including individuals and artists and art organizations. We have a really unique context in BC. We have more than 50% of all Indigenous languages in Canada, and we have the greatest language diversity. So we have our work cut out for us, a lot to do, but really exciting work for sure as we serve all of these communities. And why this work is important. Of course, our cultural heritage is the living expression of our identities, and it's integral to the health of all members of our Indigenous communities, as well as to the well-being of British Columbians. So I think it goes without saying that language, arts, and culture are interconnected with every part for Indigenous people and are completely essential to our well-being. And are certainly fundamental to Canada's heritage and identity. So, and there's just a little piece at the bottom here that the strong links to Indigenous language and culture are the foundations for personal identity and a sense of belonging. They support healthy individuals and communities with improved health, economic, and educational outcomes, which we'll speak a little bit more about later. The connection and the intersection between language and health, health of our communities, and educational outcomes and more. So we know that it's really important for sure. And these are just a couple of the reasons why. And certainly what's going to be highlighted in this presentation is the impact to our health and our well-being. So why language matters. Language has a vital role in the mental, physical, and emotional health of First Nations communities in BC. And language connects us to our culture, our history, our spirituality, and the land, which are foundations of personal and community wellness. So what is the connection between language and health? Indigenous languages are very unique, and within them, they hold intrinsic values and beliefs which are transmitted and communicated. I know sometimes, and I've heard this often, maybe other people have as well, is I've heard people say, well, it just doesn't translate. You know, what I'm saying in my language doesn't quite translate to maybe to English. And that's because our languages are so special and they have so much in them that doesn't necessarily translate to English. So many values and beliefs that are held within those languages. So then if values are important to emotional well-being and mental health, then the language which contextualizes and holds these values is, of course, critical to the health of Indigenous peoples. Speaking to the language and resilience, studies on resilience have identified language and traditional beliefs and culture as significant factors for success and resilience. I certainly see this. I see, we talk about language champions, and they truly are champions, and we'll see more of them throughout this webinar series. But you can just see and feel the resilience that comes through from these people as they, reclaim and they advocate and they champion our languages. It's just incredible. Those two just can't be separated in my mind. I've never known a speaker that hasn't had the most incredible resilience. Absolutely. And then speaking to language in the mind and the impact on academic success, when we think about language education and bilingualism, some scholars claim that teaching Indigenous children their heritage and language enhances their academic performance. So in studies comparing monolingual and bilingual children are displayed a noticeable advantage in working memory, as they tend to have more flexible minds and can be more tolerant and balanced in their thinking. Also, later in life, bilingualism has been reported to be associated with the later onset of dementia. As individuals have to select between languages in the mind, this can further develop executive functions within the mind, resulting in increased cognitive advantages, including attention, control, and conflict resolution. And I certainly see this. I know that, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of skill, I think, to have multiple languages, to be bilingual. And the advantages are evident. You can see that, having even those two worldviews that are housed within those languages give you just such an advantage, both kind of academically and then strengthening your mind. I certainly have seen that in folks that have, maybe have their language. They certainly seem to have, this different way of thinking, approaching problems differently, approaching situations differently. And I would like to think that's because of that, the uniqueness of having their language and the uniqueness of their language, certainly. And then language is a source of knowledge. So not only do our languages tie us to our history and spirituality, culture, and land, they're also a source of knowledge about our health and well-being. Language is a critical part of cultural values and beliefs that are essential to the emotional well-being and mental health of the community. And I've seen this as well, is that, there's so much knowledge in our languages as they come forward. There's so much knowledge housed in those languages. And it's unique, as we learn our language or we learn aspects of our culture and language, knowledge that maybe we don't have access to in our other languages or other systems starts to come forward. I've certainly seen that in my life as things have occurred to me and knowledges have been revealed to me as I've studied language. That's been my experience, certainly. And then identity, language is an identity. So I just want to read a quote here from Francis Rayner that says, "The use of the native tongue is like therapy. Specific native words express loving and caring. Knowing the language presents one with a strong self-identity, a culture with which to identify, and a sense of wellness." I loved that, using the language as therapy, that it's just, it speaks to our soul and it treats our soul, and it does something that almost nothing else can when we have our language. It strengthens our identity and it strengthens our spirit. And then finally, just one more quote at the bottom here. This really spoke to me as well, that this quote that says, "Throughout the world, Indigenous languages are being lost, and with them an essential part of Indigenous identity. So language revitalization can be seen, therefore, as a health promotion strategy." I love that idea that language just... that it can be seen as something that promotes health and community, that we can say, hey, this has some significant health outcomes as we've seen. It can impact academic success. It can impact the mind. It promotes resilience. It promotes knowledges about health and well-being to come forward, that therefore it is a health promotion strategy. So it's not just about, reclaiming that it's lost, but it has significant impacts in that area. And I loved that idea. So with that, I want to talk about what is Indigenous language revitalization. This definition comes from our guide to language policy and planning for BC First Nations communities, which can be found on our website under the resources tab. But this definition says that language revitalization includes any kind of activities that work towards reversing the language shift in the community and starting to regain. The key characteristics of language revitalization activities are persistence, sustainability, and honesty. So all those activities, it encompasses all those activities that work to kind of stop or slow down and reverse the shift, language shift in the community. And then just to kind of further expand on that, Language, what is it? Language revitalization could include things like programs and services, documentation, strategic planning, and then, of course, the holistic approach, including all language domains. So you can see here just a little image of some of the language domains that we think about. It includes things like elders, adults, and children, and away from home members. Indigenous language revitalization can happen in all areas, such as land and resources, in the ceremonial hall, absolutely, even in economic development, governance, and urban resources, in the school, of course, in daycare and adult education, but also the health center and sports and recreation. So those are some of the domains that you might see language revitalization take place, and certainly in community. And we encourage, communities to think about all of those areas. I know sometimes we think about things like school, certainly in the ceremonial hall, but thinking about other places where that language shift needs to happen, where we need to kind of reclaim our language in these other areas and start using our Indigenous languages. Also, we support our communities as they mobilize their capacity. So as I said before, in terms of our support for Indigenous language revitalization in all these areas, in all these domains, we provide training to support language immersion and language teaching, learning and documentation, community support for language planning, and collaboration from regional coaches. Our coaches are such a critical part of success. Our success is they're out there with the communities, coaching and supporting and walking alongside these communities as they do this really important work. We provide workshops in communities to support art grants and artist portfolios, retreats to support music industry professionals, symposiums to advance Indigenous cultural heritage work, and of course, one-on-one assistance with grant writing all across all of our programs. So those are some of the supports and things that we do around Indigenous language revitalization. And now I just kind of want to talk about our programs and how these language revitalization strategies show up. So just a little bit about our programs. So what are some of the strategies and or programs that we offer for language revitalization? So the first kind of piece here, you see creating speakers, what creates speakers. And first on the list, we have the Mentor Apprentice program that supports one-on-one learning between an adult learner and a fluent speaker. The program provides funding for 300 hours of immersion over the course of a year, along with training and support. While completing this program is certainly a big commitment, we've seen absolutely that it works. And some apprentices have become highly proficient speakers in even as little as 3 years. The next and somewhat newer program that we've been offering is the Youth Empowered Speakers Program, or the YES program. It is for BC First Nations youth. I know we were so excited. It's a program that specifically supports youth. So between the ages of 18 and 30 who want to become fluent in their language while pursuing a career in language revitalization. The program provides training, paid work internships, and funding for education and living allowance, in addition to mentor apprentice language learning. A really exciting program. I do encourage everyone to check it out. Again, we just recently launched it and really excited to be supporting the youth in this way, to be pursuing their careers in language revitalization work, while also, getting supported to learn their language through a mentor apprentice language learning style. And then we have the Reclaiming My Language program. I'll do a brief overview here, and we'll jump into it more a little bit later. But the Reclaiming My Language program is an Indigenous developed program to support silent speakers to reclaim their language and begin speaking again. The course uses cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, to support silent speakers with tools and coaching to move forward in a good way to reclaim their language. I'll leave it there for now because we will get into that a little bit more later, which I'm really excited about. And then finally, in creating speakers, the last piece is the Pathways to Language Vitality program, which provides funding and support for community-led projects that revitalize First Nations languages in BC and help create new fluent speakers. In the Pathways stream, there's many strategies that can be in that, such as language nest, language gathering and sharing grants, so coming together and gathering, and then community-led projects, which are really determined by the community, what they want to do and what they're needing. We call this an open strategy program because it can really be up to the community how they want to approach language revitalization. So whereas our other programs maybe kind of lay out or a little bit more specific in how to approach language revitalization, the Pathways is really open. You can really determine how you want to approach language revitalization in community. It's really community-led. The next piece is planning. So the LRPP, or Language Revitalization Planning Program, provides funding, resources, and coaching to communities to develop long-term strategic and community-wide plans for Indigenous language revitalization. We've certainly seen evidence of the benefit of planning in communities, creating these long-term strategic plans to kind of lay out the vision and the path forward to language revitalization. I know sometimes we can get really enmeshed in the work and using these specific strategies, but we've seen that there can be a real benefit to kind of planning that journey ahead of time and saying, what do we want to do? What strategies do we want to do and how, and planning out that journey. And that's what the LRPP program supports. And then finally, there's the documentation piece. So there's the Language Technology Program. This program combines the First Voices program and the Digitization Grants Initiative to offer funding and training to First Nations communities, governments, bands, and tribal councils, and Indigenous organizations in BC. The goal of this program is to support communities to develop and sustain cohesive language technology program. This is so pertinent, especially for right now, as we've had this big shift to online. And I've certainly heard people say, how can we develop our language technologies? And this program is designed to specifically support that work. So that's a little bit about our language programs. Of course, as I mentioned, we do support cultural heritage programming and work and grants, and as well as arts grants, which can be found on our website as well. There's so much information on our website. I do encourage everyone to go check it out. There's a lot, so maybe carve out a little time to do that because there's a lot on our website. And all of this information with more descriptions and information regarding all of our programming can be found on our website, which is just fpcc.ca. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the RML program specifically, especially because this relates to language and health. And this is why I really want to highlight this program. I might be a little bit biased. This is one of the programs, I support and I walk alongside. And it's a program that's very near and dear to my heart. I have people in my family that I would consider silent speakers, people that understand the language that maybe don't speak it for one reason or another. But when they get around the language or they get around, culture or certain situations, the language just seems to kind of come out of them. So this program is really dear to my heart. I really love it. I'm looking forward to talking about it. So what is this program? And again, why are we talking about it? To me, this program demonstrates so clearly the link between our health and our languages, especially our mental health and our languages. I would like to share a little bit about the program and then talk about the impacts this program has had on me and the communities that have participated. And then we'll go to Michael and we'll let him kind of talk about his experience. So what is the Reclaiming My Language program? Like I said before, the Reclaiming My Language program is for people who understand but do not speak their First Nations language. In other words, someone who is a silent speaker. A silent speaker is someone who has a good understanding of a language but does not speak it. And there's many different kinds of silent speakers, such as someone who grew up hearing their language and who understands it. Another example is someone who maybe moved away from home and hasn't had the opportunity maybe to return and be using their language quite as much. Maybe they're in a different setting. And it could even include someone that, that doesn't have too many people to speak to. They don't have people around them that they can kind of regularly use their language with, so that maybe remains a little bit more silent. It could even include someone who has studied their language extensively and who has a high level of understanding, but that doesn't speak it. There are also different types of silent speakers. There's many different types of silent speakers. I know learners. I know even for myself being a learner, and I've talked to people about this quite a bit, is that, you learn, but there's just that feeling of that tentative feeling of, it's tough to bring it out, even though you might have it in your mind or in your heart or your spirit. Sometimes it can feel tough to bring out. And so I would consider those people silent speakers as well. So the course is based on a successful program that was developed in Norway and Sweden for and by Indigenous Sami people. The program was then adapted to the BC context and began to be delivered here. So you can see pictured here is Jane Jusso, the lady who came up with the program, and her colleague, Sini Erasmus, along with FPCC's Suzanne Gessner, who's a research and development linguist, and Aliana Parker, who's our language program manager. You can see them all pictured here. So it was this team of people who are critical to bringing the program from Norway and Sweden to BC. And it was really exciting to us that this program was developed by the Indigenous peoples there, and we were able to adapt it to our context. And it was important to us that this was a program that was developed by Indigenous people there who identified themselves as silent speakers. A bit of a different context in that area in Norway and Sweden, but very similar to here, a similar situation where there was language loss, and they had developed this program, and it was fortuitous that we were able to identify this as something that would be beneficial to BC First Nations, and then bring it over here and adapt the course to this context. The model uses cognitive behavioral therapy, like I said, CBT, to support silent speakers to overcome blockages about using their Indigenous language and community. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is a proven therapy that helps people change how they think about a situation, thinking being cognitive, in order to change their response, which is the behavior piece, to a situation. So it's a short-term therapy that's designed to help people move forward with a specific situation. It has been used for a variety of things, such as anxiety or phobias, even quitting smoking or losing weight. So I know it's used widely, and it's been really successful in this program. And again, I think Michael may be able to speak a little bit more to that. But in this case, CBT is used to help people speak their languages and bring it out. So that's a little bit, just an overview. I will do a bit more of a course background here as well. Again, we talked about who is a silent speaker. Again, it's somebody who has a good understanding of their language that potentially does not speak. This could include people like residential school survivors or away from home members, individuals that grew up hearing the language, and many different types. You may be even someone yourself that kind of identifies as somewhat silent sometimes. And then how does this course work? This course is a 10-week course, and it is a combination of class time and homework and internship. But the biggest piece I see, and the biggest, piece that contributes, I think, to the program's success is the sense of community, is the coming together of the silent speakers, through the class time. So coming together to just to share a little bit and learn a little bit about language, about linguistics, about what is CBT, all of those pieces, and then doing that homework piece, collaborating with each other, working with a mentor, a self-selected mentor, and then of course an internship. So getting out there. So all of these pieces revolve heavily around community, which is one of the, like I said, I think the biggest contributors to a success is when we come together and we feel seen and heard, and maybe we felt silent. It's so empowering to see people come forward and to bring out their language, and to have a mentor that encourages you in that process to bring out your language. So that's one of the biggest, of course, like I said, how does it work? It's class time, homework, and internship. But the real, special stuff is the community piece and the coming together. And almost every course that I think that I've facilitated or I've walked alongside, people say, we want to stay together. We want to keep going. And I think that was the case in Michael's situation, is everyone wants to say, it was really great. 10 weeks is too short. It's a really great kicking off place. It's fantastic to get people feeling feeling like they can start to bring out their language. But I know, this program has created long-lasting kind of friendships and connections and communities. At least that's kind of what I've seen for sure. So who delivers the course? So the course is delivered by 3 co-instructors. So there is a community specialist, and this is the person that facilitates the community piece. They bring people together, ensure that people have, the participants have everything that they need, that they're tended to. They do a lot of that piece. There's a mental health specialist that really leads the CBT piece, that guides people along this process of beginning to bring out their language in a really safe way, in a good way. And then, of course, there's a language specialist. So this piece is where they might learn a little bit about linguistics. I know the participants always seem to really enjoy the language specialist piece, where they learn about things like how, babies acquire language, how language works in the mind, things like that. And it's always really exciting to see the learning of, some of the elders in this program as they learn about these linguistic pieces. It's so fun to watch them learn and get excited about that. And now I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience. One of the experiences I had just before we turn it over to Michael here. So I just want to talk about a course I witnessed in Upper Nicola, the Upper Nicola program. And you can see a couple images here. I felt really extremely privileged to be able to be a part of this program. They invited me in to kind of witness and watch this program. And it was a real... it really impacted me just watching all of these people, again, demonstrate that resilience as they move through this program, the strength to move through this program. You can see a quote. I love this quote here from Seraphine Stewart. She says, "I was just amazed at myself at how the language started to pour out because I'd already heard it as a child. It was there and it was deep down inside my heart, but I never did speak it. This program has helped me to have that release." It was such a special quote, just hearing her talk about it. And she talked a bit more about it. We just captured this one little piece, but she really talked at length about how, this program did help her have that release and start to bring it out and start to kind of diminish that feeling of silence, maybe that feeling of not being able to bring the language forward. And then just another little piece here, some more feedback we got about this program was somebody said in 10 short weeks, 20 to 60 hours, our community members were able to make paradigm shifts. Sometimes these shifts take a lifetime to understand, address, and change. And then it was unanimous. Everyone wanted the program to continue. In Sokchin, fluent speakers are being recognized and appreciated. Plus, they can dialogue and communicate on a weekly basis, which was a bonus. I think that I love this quote. It captured for me the power of this program. I know it might feel a bit short in 10 weeks, but it really does have some, significant impact and is able to really, shift for people some of the blockages and shift out of the way some of those blockages to the feeling of being able to speak. And again, I think the health benefits are so evident here that, those blocks, maybe those mental blocks, those kind of emotional blocks that we have on us and on being able to bring out our language are able to maybe be diminished or even kind of reduced entirely through this program and the coming together and the community and everything. Also, this program in Upper Nicola, they said the domino effect does not even capture the words I'm struggling with expressing. And I've seen this as well. I saw this in this community. It was, again, so amazing to witness the domino effect that happens, as these speakers come out and they maybe don't feel silent anymore. The mobilization and the capacity for mobilization is just incredible. You have 10 people now that maybe weren't speaking as much that have begun speaking. The power in that and the momentum of that is just astronomical. It's amazing to see 10 people have that release and to to begin to speak their language and infuse it throughout the community in different ways. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the internship piece of this course is really interesting. We provide an opportunity throughout the program, in later stages of the program, I should say, for an internship. So the silent speakers have the opportunity to go into a language setting or any setting really and do what we call an internship. It's just really mostly about getting them out there and getting them in community and getting them speaking. And you can see, again, that mobilization as these 10 people get out and go out into things like the language nest, the language classes, maybe into the band office to help with making signage or help with various things as they start to go into maybe the First Voices program and start to document the words that begin coming out. All part of that internship piece of just trying to get out there and get into the community and now use, this language that's now starting to come out of them, which is just so incredible to witness. So that domino effect, of course, is really spoke to me that, just it seems to kind of one thing after another really impact the community in amazing ways. And again, community health, but, other areas of community as well. So yeah, that's my little bit about the Upper Nicola program. Again, it was such a treat to be there. You can see them all with their certificates on the left-hand side. It was really beautiful to take that picture. It was a windy day, a windy, cold day, but really amazing to see them come together and celebrate all their success of going through this program and all the hard work of maybe working through some of the feelings of being a silent speaker. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that program and the impact it had on me. It was really beautiful, really amazing to witness. And I'm still so thankful that they allowed me to be part of it. But with that, that's kind of my piece. And now I just want to turn it over to Michael to talk about his experience. So I'm going to stop sharing now so we can kind of just get Michael on the screen and talk about his experience with the Reclaiming My Language program.
Thank you, Thea. You're captured a lot in the slides, and a lot of the experience. I just want to share my experience with Youth and our Reclaiming Our Language program. And you're right, 10 weeks, we just started getting together when we hit the 10-week mark. And, that confidence was there, just starting to come out for a lot of those people that were participating in that. One of the things that I just really wanted to share was, it's so humbling just to witness that first parts of the uncertainty within the body that's holding the language down to transitioning out of that space and feeling comfortable to actually using the words. My late aunt, Ruth Tom, she was a silent speaker. We would go to gatherings, and like as a young child, I was always at my granny's side or my aunt's side or my mother. And, I looked to them when the language was being spoken. And I was always curious why, as a young child, my aunt could understand what was going on, but she never spoke it to anyone in our house. And I was like, wow. And later on, as I got older, talking with Auntie Ruth and saying, so aunties, tell me about this. And this was long before we're where we are today. This is like no language programs were even around. She goes, well, I had such a hard time at residential school. And then I realized the impact, the long impact on our health and well-being, our mental health and well-being. My aunt worked through that, and it was really beautiful to see her witness, or for me to witness her moving through those spaces and getting up and speaking publicly as she started to evolve herself through the process. Through taking different kinds of programs 20 years ago, and actually getting to a place where she was comfortable in her words. So in Youth Movement, you've created an opportunity. You created such an opportunity for at least 9, or I think there was 12 or 15 speakers in the room. You've created that opportunity. And for our programming and me coming involved with it was because my background is in counseling and psychology and communication. I knew of cognitive behavior therapy. I love it as a practice. And it's really quite simple and beautiful in so many ways. And taking a look at, Western beliefs and values and applying some of Granny's teachings to those as a process for dealing with those heartfelt emotions. When they came up in session or in the very beginning of the program as we're developing as a group. And I'll share this with everybody. When I was a young person, my granny always said, go to the water and listen. Go to the water and listen, grandson. And that's all she did, was she framed it that way. She didn't frame it any other way. She didn't tell me to go and listen to something. She said, go to the water and listen. And so in that process, I still do it every day, go to the water. I live here in Tofino. And I'll share this with you. I was in a 4th year neurobiopsych class, and my instructor started talking about biorhythms and cycles. And he started talking about the beach. And I'm deep in my book. He started sounding like Granny. He says, say if you go to the water and go to the beach and you listen to a cycle of waves that's less than 60 in 1 minute, a wave coming up and a wave going down, wave coming up and a wave going down. So I got up out of my textbook and we're like, he's starting to sound like Granny now. And he said, for instance, if we listen to the cycle of waves that's less than 60 cycles in a minute or 60 waves in a minute, our body becomes relaxed. We start to breathe a little bit easier. Our heart rate drops. Our respiratory rate drops. Our blood pressure drops. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking about the ocean and I feel a little more relaxed and comfortable. I'm like, Granny was smart. Holy, wow. So when Granny said our ways are right and proper, she was referring to all the things we did prior to contact. And that led directly, it transitioned so easy into reclaiming our language and to, looking at the activating event that stopped us from speaking our language. And working with the group, working with them as a group, working with them as individuals, is finding that space that allowed them to relax, to change that belief, to find that strength that they, whatever it is, to get into that new space, to change that irrational belief that they had that was put upon them, whatever experience they had, to stop them from talking their language. And so that was beautiful to witness in people and individuals and as the group, as they started to remember sights, sounds, smells, and tastes of the good things around language. And I was saying, well, tell me more about that. And as they started telling me more about that, it started to change the framework of belief that they had within them. So that was just so amazing. And then it made me, and I like how you said earlier, art and language are so interconnected and related. And so I brought in stuff, our things, our baskets, our weaving. I brought in all the things that I have. And I got our I got all the participants to hold the cedar rope. I had itup, siwap. I had a whale, gray whale jawbone tools. So we held these items to help us remember. And as we had those conversations and helping us remember, the language became more easy for the participants to actually start using it further, not just in the group, not just in individual settings, but at home with the grandkids, with their brothers and sisters. The language opened up so many more things that we never knew what we thought we'd hit it with. So as brothers or sisters who started to reclaim their language, they would talk to their sibling. And that created this bond, this wonderful connection that allowed them to build their relationship and rebuild their relationship. So that became language as therapy and language as health promotion. The community came together, and they just kept bringing it out. It just kept. You said domino. It just kept going. And so for the participants to reframe that experience, to remember all of Granny's teachings or Auntie's teachings, and to look at their life differently and how they reach out to their family, or how they, our language is so beautiful that in terms of communication, it was direct. It was, it's hard to describe in English, but I love how direct and how we were able to communicate. So as our group evolved, witnessing their language evolve, and coming to the last days of our sessions, we came together around food. Food was our medicine. Food was the host. It allowed us to have the conversation. It allowed those words to stay down within us and for us to remember. I encouraged our group to go to the Museum of Anthropology in Vancouver, and they did. I was like, wow. They went to the Museum of Anthropology and held our tools. The tools that were brought in to the museum, in the early 1900s, tools that were made just after contact, and got to hold them. So not only is art and language and art so interchangeable, the fact that they held post-contact, pre-contact tools, if you haven't gone there and experienced holding a tool, it's transformative in so many ways. It's humbling to be in that space. It's humbling to be in the room and hold a paddle, other tools or baskets from great masters. It's just such an empowering experience. And so our team, our group in Yushuset had a chance to go, and that was the end of the program for them, as they went and actually held those tools. So I'm really grateful that, thankful for the time, effort, and attention of your organization to put things together in such a format that allows our people to experience the language. I think that's the one thing I just wanted to share. Do you have any questions, Thea, or is there anything that you want me to touch base on as well?
Yeah, I think you've touched a lot. I just want to highlight something really important that you've said and what I've heard today is also the connection between language, health, and land and territory, and the things that come from our land, the foods and the things that come from our land. I've certainly seen that in the program, and I really want to thank you for bringing that forward as well. I was reminded the other day as I watched a session from our Heliset to Spell conference. I was reminded of a lot of our language comes from the noises and the voices that we hear out of the land, the things that we hear are words that, the words that we have for certain things maybe sound like that thing. So, I want to thank you for just acknowledging that piece around language and territory and land and the bounty that comes from our land and our tools and our baskets and our foods and things like that. Really important to highlight. So thank you for that. I think you've touched on a lot of the questions I had. I wanted you to share about your overall experience with the Rml program and the connection between language and health, and I certainly see that. I think the only question I maybe have for you is also maybe speaking to the group setting and or the aspects of community and coming together that facilitate both health and language. So also the connection between health and land, but also community and just what you witnessed there. And then I think that's all the questions I had for you. So we can leave it there once maybe you've answered that. So,
yeah, it's like I'll tell you, I want to share this with you. The pandemic has really moved us in so many ways, moved our language around a bit, but we also recognized it as well. And so our team, our Teach Like Mental Health team, turned to our speakers about the pandemic and how do we operate in it, and what do we need to do within our own mental health to move around in this new world. And we came up with a term for our mask wearing, and so we looked to our teachers, and wiki klawa is to don't stand too close. Literally, it means I love our language because our language is so direct. Don't stand close. Wiki klawa don't stand close. And so, we're still adapting it to these new environments. And I think when we adapt the language to things that are happening around us in this world, and how things are operating, I think with that, and just acknowledging, where we want to be within the language. We were such fluent and clear speakers with the words that we used. And I think, that the speakers that we have opened up in our territory, it's just going to be an exciting next couple of years. I'm hoping our program continues to grow. I know I just saw the other day my sister and my niece just finished leveling up into their language program, and they were very public on Facebook with it. I was like, oh my God, my sister's learning the language, and I'm so happy that she's part of that now. And it's because of our language program at UTHUTHIT. It's changing families. And so it's changing our health values and how we put things into our mind and our body and how we operate. So thank you so much. My nation is moving forward with the language in so many ways. It's going in a really good way. And, we're going to keep doing that and keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you both so much, Gilakasa, Tleko, Haichka. I'm so grateful and just really inspired listening to you both share about your work and your passion. You both are doing amazing work for your people and for many communities and nations. And we'll shift into a little bit more of a dialogue and look to some of the comments and questions that have come forward from all the folks viewing. I just wanted to take a moment to reintroduce myself for those who joined a bit after our introductions. Yo gelika sokla nukwa amputlas, hetman ligami Jessica, Guklen la Yalis, Gaiklen la Namglis, Tlu Hawatmis, Tlu Kwayoth. So I'm very grateful to be here in sort of the host seat to listen in and to learn from our wonderful guests and language champions. My name is Jessica Berudin, and I am working with the First Nations Health Authority, our Vancouver Island region, as a traditional wellness specialist. So I have a really wonderful role that I get to learn from our knowledge keepers, from our traditional practitioners, cultural healers, and of course our fluent speakers, and to help to guide transformation in our health system. So language is obviously a huge part, and we've got a great team supporting this initiative. I just wanted to acknowledge our team. So we also have from FNHA, Larissa Kozer, who's the coordinator of the Respecting Tobacco program, and a practicum student named Sarah Argumedo, who's working with me, and our program is housed within primary care. So thank you to both Sarah and Larissa for their hard work. And from the Khpe Wellness, I've been working on that pronunciation, so apologies if I didn't get it quite right. We have Farron Charlie, Kira Jack, and Marco Cafiero. So thank you to the team for, they are behind the scenes, but have been working tremendously hard. So I just wanted to raise my hands to everyone who has made this possible. And thank you, Thea and Michael. And I just wanted to read out a couple of quotes from both of you that really struck me. And one of the first ones is sharing that instead of asking, how do you say this, or translating it to instead change that to help me remember, how do you say this? Another beautiful quote I heard was, the use of the native tongue is like therapy. And again, sharing our language as therapy and our languages as health promotion. And also recognizing how that learning, that process, there's some uncertainty in the body. And so when we relax our bodies, we're able to open up and expand that mind-body connection to remember. And I loved what you shared, Michael, about what your granny taught you about going to the water and the biorhythms with the cycles of the waves. And it just made me really reflect deeply on an experience I was so privileged to have. I had my first year of traditional fast this past fall, and we went to Mears Island. And I was with many Nuu-chah-nulth people, mostly Nuu-chah-nulth Ushtaku, and that's just right where the Christie Residential School was. So that experience was very powerful, but I was able to set up my fasting area near the water, and listening to that rhythm, the cycle of the waves was deeply healing for me, and connecting over those days in that beautiful territory there to the rhythms there, the frequencies really helped me. And I'm just so moved by what you shared about your family connections. And I wanted to ask a few questions and also look to the chat here. But I think to start off, I'd just like to hear if you'd like to share a bit more about your language learning journey and who's inspired you. And I've heard a little bit, Michael, you've spoken about your aunt, your grandmother, and Thea, you've mentioned your grandfather as well. And other people in your family, but I'd just like to invite you to share about your language learning journeys and who inspires you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. I think my language learning journey, it's interesting because I think, I think before maybe I was, I assisted on this program. I'd probably tell you I didn't have one. I'd probably say I don't have a language learning journey. And I never have, and that makes me sad. But as I started this program, and as I started to learn about this program and work with the communities as they did these programs, I realized something. I remember I was sitting down one day and I said, oh, I'm going to learn my sounds. I'm going to practice my sounds. Just thinking that, oh gosh, I'm not going to get far, thinking, I'll just give it a go though. And I remember I sat down and I started, saying these sounds, and they just completely started to come out. All of the sounds of my language. And I had completely forgotten. If you'd asked me beforehand, again, my answer would have been, I don't have a language learning journey. I've never tried, never done it. I was reminded as I sat down and I practiced these sounds that my dad used to do the same thing. He used to sit me down and make me practice my sounds. I don't know why I forgot that. I don't know why that happened, but it came back to me in a complete flash that, these sounds were coming out because those seeds were planted when I was a child. That my dad was made me learn these sounds and practice these sounds and the different sounds in my mouth. He made me practice from the time I was really, really young. And it was watching him, trying to reclaim his language that I began to do the same. So I think one of the biggest things about my language learning journey was that shift of thinking, I don't have much of one, or I don't think I do have one, and realizing that we all have a language learning journey. Maybe we've forgotten what that looks like, or we don't know, or we're unsure, but we're all on this journey together. And maybe, at different stages on that journey, maybe at kind of different points in our journey, in our path, but that we are all on that path together, being Indigenous peoples and working towards this together. So I think that was a really big realization for me, especially in relation to this program and how it impacted me for sure. So of course, I'm still working, a lot of work to be done as gosh, those sounds are hard to practice sometimes. I know I do. My throat gets sore, my tongue gets sore. So still a lot of work and practice on my end. But that realization, it was really impactful to me as I sat down and I realized that maybe I too have a little bit of a silent speaker in me as I've kind of at a young age, and then realized, as I aged that, they're there, those sounds and those words are there kind of deep inside, just have to bring them out.
Yeah, that's my journey is very similar in so many ways. I grew up with the language in the house. Grannies and aunties and uncles were always speaking our language. I was fortunate to bring my granny everywhere, and when we went to those big meetings, all the chiefs, they all Wutki, my mama, they would always just speak our language. And so it was in those moments of always being around the language. And about 10, maybe 15 years ago, one of our late chiefs, Richard Lucas, we were our team was really small at the time, and I said a few things in our language. And then he leaned into me after, he goes, hey, Michael, keep doing that. That was good. I'm like, oh man, like all it took was just a little nudge, and that really stepped up my language in terms of being more public with it. And he goes, because I had said after someone was speaking, and I said, and he goes, hey, do you know what you're saying? I said, yeah, I think I'm saying, it's like, thank you, or like, you're welcome. He goes, no, you're saying you're good for something. And this is how direct our language was. And that's what I love about our language. It was because it's so impactfully direct. And the English language is a bit, as it was framed to me, it was a bit wishy-washy. It wasn't direct. Our language was direct. We knew how to communicate as Indigenous people. We still do. And so I'm always learning. We're remembering the old words. I think there was, when I talked to our fluent speakers, the people that were born before 1930, their language was really the old words that we're starting to lose a bit of that. And so the last bit of old words that we pulled back were for Two-Spirit people. We almost lost them, but we were able to, through the internet and through my language speakers and through the language app, we could text back and forth those words. All of a sudden, it turned out, because my language people were all in different locations, and I'd be saying, this is what the word I think I'm saying, but they would come back and say, this is how you're saying it, and this is what you're actually saying. So it's always evolving, and technology has helped that. The texting app, it's like, wow, we can share words back and forth. And that's just been so helpful. So my language is always evolving. It's Granny said, you never stop learning until you breathe your last breath, grandson. And we truly, that's what this is about. Always learning. Chu Nashapi.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. We've got some questions in the chat, so I'll start with the first one. Would you be able to share some advice for how health departments and cultural workers can collaborate in community to incorporate language as health promotion?
Yeah, for sure. Let me bring up this question here and just have it on my sidebar so I make sure to speak to it. Yeah, I think what we've seen, and especially as a part of our language revitalization planning program, the importance of kind of cross-department work, and that community language revitalization is not limited to the language department or the education department. Again, as we saw all those language domains that we talked about, all the different areas that language exists and language is able to come forward, that we really need to look to all of those spaces to revitalize our language. And I know certainly the health department is a contributor to that. A lot of our Rml programs ran through health departments as a part of their kind of strategy for overall kind of health and well-being and bringing the language out as a contributor to health. So I would encourage you, if you can, to maybe look at some of our programs, as I mentioned, the ones that are on our website, see which ones might be applicable for you as kind of strategies to kind of incorporate into your kind of health strategies and what you're doing in community. And also, like I said, reach out to the coaches. We have really, really, really incredible language coaches that walk alongside communities and help facilitate this work. So they're able to not only talk about those different language revitalization strategies that might be relevant to you, but also kind of walk alongside, help coach, and just kind of support you as you kind of think about what do we want to do here, and how can we as a health department collaborate in community to incorporate language as health promotion. Also, like I said, maybe look at that language revitalization planning program. There's definitely documents and resources associated with that program that speaks to, again, the importance of language revitalization across departments, in the whole community, really holistic language revitalization. So I would look at maybe that program information, see if something resonates for you there. And then maybe look at the resources that are associated with that program to see if there's kind of strategies that are specific that may kind of specifically support you and your work in the health department. So I don't know that we have, I think our info for kind of our website and other things has been put in the chat, so you can check that out. Do check out fpcc.com. And then feel free. I know we love to touch base with community. We're not like one of those organizations that says, go for it, here's some resources. We love talking to communities. We love interacting and connecting with not just the coaches, but our whole staff and our whole team. So if you ever have questions or want to get into a bit of a deeper discussion, feel free to reach out to specific program staff, to the coaches, to all of us. We love having talks on the phone or even talks in this way on Zoom, and connecting with communities to dig in a little bit deeper and how we can support and assist you. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Michael, would you like to share any advice for connecting with cultural programs and health workers?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Thea is saying. It really is, it goes across all the boards, not just what, we have several programs, every nation is offering something different, is how do we engage the language within that program? And what is the best path that we want to put that language on? And looking at having those, if it's just a simple phrase or a word, or a group of phrases or a group of words, it allows the language to start being embedded within the program. So it becomes, it expands outside of that. So it really just looking at what programs are going on within your territory, within your office or your organization, and looking at how you can start utilizing those words. I know for us 30 years ago, it was just by putting on the doors, office door in our language, bathroom, male, female in our language. So we were doing all the things, to start embedding that language within our territories. And that could just happen simply in an office or in health programs. I know our nurses program has developed a language program where they have cards in terms of how to ask people how they're feeling. And so it's just a matter of really engaging that within the community and not being afraid to utilize it. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anyone who's listening in, if you'd like to add a question to the Q&A box, please feel free to do so. One of the questions we had in the chat was, I work in a daycare. This is from Colleen Weiss. I work in a daycare with infant and toddlers and 3 to 5 year old children. We would like to implement more language into the program. We work with Our Future, and we would like to strengthen our program with language and culture. So Thea, do you have any comments to share about how it can be strengthened in for daycare toddlers? And I think maybe this is relating to the language nest that you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So first of all, I just want to say and acknowledge you and your working community. That's really important work, working with our little ones and our young ones. So I just want to acknowledge you for that work and having a heart for that work. It's such incredible work that you do. So thank you. Yeah, and then like you said, we do have a language nest program that supports specifically not just the language nest and having a language nest in community, but also offers supports and coaching and training. So as a part of that program, there is some training to kind of look at how to run a really great language nest in your community. Again, we do have a lot of resources on our website, language nest resources. So our resource page is really vast, but there is a search bar. So you can check that out as well and look at what resources we have online. There's a lot. Again, I would reach out to program staff and coaches. The coaches are good and great at connecting and are skilled and trained at many different strategies so they can speak to the Language Nest program. And then look at, again, the Pathways to Language Revitalization program that has the Language Nest in it. So that supports the Language Nest kind of strategy in community. So supports it both with grant funds, but also with training and support, like I mentioned. But we know that, training and support for the people that do the work in the language nest is really important. It's not just about kind of opening up a language nest and going for it, although it's important and that's an important part of the process. Another important part is making sure that the people that are working with our young ones have the tools and skills that and feel confident to do this work, as they kind of walk alongside our little ones to do it. So we do provide that training, and definitely check out some of the resources. And I know there's a lot online on our website, and also I think I've seen other resources on places like YouTube and things where Language Nest will put up, little videos and things of what they're doing with their little ones. So there's so much out there to look at. Definitely do check it out. And then please do give us a call as well. If there's, if you're wanting to access our kind of resources, tools, or grant funds, for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I stopped in at the Language Nest in Port Alberni at the Friendship Center, and it was just, a phenomenal experience to see these these little ones just learning the language and in a fun way and in a way that allowed them joy. And so, my thoughts are like, if you don't have a language nest in your community, seek out and see if you can do a site visit as to what that's really, how it's operating and witnessing it. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I wanted to close with one final question, and just some closing words from both of you around what is your hope for the future for our Indigenous languages? What do you vision for the future? And maybe if you're comfortable to start, Michael, and then Thea, and then you can close.
Wow. That's such a big question. And I think for me, it's really just people speaking our language. My granny had a vision of what her life would be like. And I think a lot of us have a vision of what our future events would be. And, our leadership, pulling, young people, I'm talking young people, who are leaders in our communities, openly using our language for the first time in public, and stating that publicly. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to use our language, and I'm so excited and happy to see people doing that. So I think it's just a matter of us always moving forward with the words, so that more and more of our people are comfortable remembering how to speak our words. More and more people are comfortable utilizing our words. And I love using the language whenever I'm out in public, especially when, not since for this past year, of course, but, prior to this pandemic, speaking our language, in public. And that just felt so empowering, in so many ways. And I think that's where I want to see where we land. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I echo Michael's sentiment. That's a big question. And thanks for asking it, though, because I think it's important. But as I mentioned earlier, I think FPCC's vision for language is really powerful and speaks to me that Indigenous languages, arts, and cultural heritage in BC are thriving. That thriving is really important to me. Also, I think for me, part of my vision and where I hope to see us go and where I see us go, a big piece of it is just making sure that this work is community led. This is why I'm so passionate about the Language Revitalization Planning Program, because it supports communities to bring forward their visions of what language revitalization looks like in their community. And to see that come forward is just so beautiful. As a part of that program, we encourage the participants in that program to create declarations of living language, where they say, we declare that our language is living, that it is alive, and here it is, a real, taking a real stance on, and this is how we see our language, that it's living, that it's alive, that we're working towards it. And it's so beautiful to see those declarations come out. So I think my biggest thing is just, and my vision is just seeing those that collective vision from these community members, from the people, and feeling their heart, and feeling that come through as the overall vision for language revitalization in BC. It's really beautiful work to see that planning work. And a big piece of it is, bringing forward that visioning work. I think the other thing too, and this is something that I've always thought, and that's really stuck with me, is that sometimes I think it feels like, we can think that we need to chase a vision of old, a vision of the past. And I remember one of the most impactful stories I heard about vision and language revitalization, a story someone told me is they said they received a vision. They received a vision as they slept, a vision of the language like a fire, and needing to stoke that fire of language and build it up. And it just totally revealed to me in that moment that that the vision for our languages can come through in all sorts of ways. It can come through in our language and our old people, but our young people too. It can come through in our visions and our prayers and our ceremonies. That vision for our language can it can come out, and it can be new. It can be today, here, now, that, we don't have to mourn what was lost because it's deep down inside us. When we connect, it's, in our dreams, it comes through our ancestors in all sorts of ways, so that we don't have to be sad. We can really be secure in knowing that vision is going to come forward, and that vision for language revitalization is going to come through, in the right time, in the right way, and through the right people. It was such an uplifting and encouraging thought to me to think that at any point, any of us can have this, this kind of vision that kind of bursts into flames, that comes through maybe in a dream or another sort of way. So that's what I see as kind of communities coming forward with their visions of language and in any way that feels meaningful to them. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, big question for sure. And thank you. That gave me chills. I really appreciate both of you. And again, raising my hands to your beautiful work and your ways. Thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge with us, your gifts. And thank you to everyone who joined us today on the webinar for this important topic of language revitalization. Please note that following the webinar, you will receive a link to a survey. We just really ask kindly that you take a few moments to complete that so we can improve how we're operating with this webinar series. And just to let you know that next Thursday on March 25th, we'll have the first session with our Nuu-chah-nulth speakers, focusing on the central dialect. So we're very pleased to have JC Lucas and Levi Martin as our fluent speakers, as well as Simca Martin and Chutska Rorik. So they will be joining us as language champions and language learners alongside the fluent speakers. So please register, join us, and we hope to see you there. I'll just kindly ask Michael if you'd like to share a closing prayer or any closing words with us, and wish you a beautiful rest of your day. Gelakasa kleko haichka.
It's been such a great day. Thank you for allowing us to have the space together to share this. Chu atlipiatwat. Why kashna satlipiatwat. Kleko, nanyaksu, kleko. Why kashna satlipiatwat. Flak wanasu atwat. Kasian fli maxti. Hakapinatwat. Chama piapi. Wakima mamanishka. Kukuwatsa. Chu unatlapi. Thank you.
Have a beautiful day. Gelakasa.
Thank you to everyone.